Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 6th part of What If Naruto Becomes Demonic Samurai. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Prior to Naruto's arrival in Iwa by 5 days, both the Hidden Frost Village and the Hidden Hot Springs Village catered to vacationers and were frequented by shinobi looking for peace and quiet. Although neither had a large number of shinobi, one was actively protecting the other. The tranquility that these two small towns were known for was tragically destroyed in an instant. Thousands of Iwa and Auto shinobi descended upon the villages without warning and conquered them by force. The result was not a battle but a slaughter. The two small villages' shinobi forces didn't have the training to fend off such a powerful foe. Blood stained the streets and anarchy reigned. The conflict had already claimed its first victims. As soon as Kumo heard the news, they began organizing a nighttime raid to free the two villages. They planned to drive the enemy back into Otto, where they could wait for Konoha and Aim to arrive and put an end to the Sound Village for good. The enemy was caught off guard and their plan succeeded. The enemy troops were celebrating their victory by drinking and soaking in the hot springs. That, and nobody expected Kumo to be quite so bold. A day after defeating a small force of shinobi, the Iwa and Otto forces were similarly forced to retreat, this time suffering heavy casualties in the process. There was now a standoff between the two sides. Kumo could only keep holding out hope that assistance would soon arrive. Word eventually made it to Taki that Iwa had been spotted near their borders. It was also said that Iwa conquered all of Claw Country by himself, including the Hidden Grass Village. It looked like another shinobi war was about to break out as Aim and Taki were surrounded. Shibuki, the leader of the Taki, reached out to Suna, a close ally, out of concern. Suna, another Konoha ally, was prepared for war before she heard what Iwa had done, and she found it inexcusable. Rasa informed Konoha of his course correction after being inspired by Rock's audacity. They shared Kumo's hope that drawing enemy attention away from Aim and Taki would buy them some time. Any possibility of this happening had been dashed by the two Jinchuriki Iwa. When Suna and Aim tried to free the devastated grass village, they took heavy casualties and had to retreat to recover. As a result of this disaster, Suna reinforcements were sent to Aim and Taki, and until Konoha intervened, the situation remained static. Yugura laughed like a schoolgirl possessed in Kiri and immediately began plotting an invasion of Konoha. Unfortunately, they lost a week because rebels infiltrated their supply depot and shipyard. Their fleet required extensive maintenance to get it back into fighting shape. Yugura also found this to be extremely annoying. Mei Terumi and the Bloodline Fighters. Despite their small numbers, the guerrillas' familiarity with the layout of Kiri's village proved to be a decisive advantage. When Yugura received a box of severed heads, it was clear that Zabuza Momochi and Hakuyuki had racked up a high body count. The Jinchuriki's reaction whenever one of those packages arrived could best be described as enraged. 2 days until Naruto arrives in Aim from Toba's base, whereabouts unknown. Tobi received news from Zetsu on the status of the war he orchestrated, and the Uchiha were ecstatic with the outcome. The villages were still at a standstill, but both sides had suffered significant casualties due to the impasse. Hanzo walked in with a bottle of sake and a pair of sake dishes right as he was dismissing the plant guy. Before sitting down at his desk and removing his mask, Tobi cast a suspicious glance at Hanzo. His cool, collected voice soon filled the space. "I've never even considered requesting sake before." Hanzo nodded, then he popped the cork on the bottle and set the dishes on the desk. He answered his master's question as he poured the drinks. "Not even I would have been so audacious to come up with such a plan, so congratulations are in order for a mastermind like yourself." Tobi glanced at the salamander and then at the sake in front of him. After pausing for emphasis, he pointed to the sake for his visitor. Hanzo didn't waste any time chugging his rice wine. Before gesturing to Tobi, the former ruler of Aim thought, "Let's hope Orochimaru's antidote works." "For your own good, would you?" Hanzo's lack of an adverse reaction led him to believe the sake was fine to drink. So, Tobi chugged the booze. When Hanzo didn't respond, he poured another and cleared his throat. "I take it this sake and your visit are about more than just using my intellect and strength, and that there is something else you seek." Hanzo agreed, and he did as Orochimaru had instructed. "After all, not even the mighty Sannin could match my strength and Aim. I want my home back. I also think it will be quicker to use Konin to gain what is rightfully yours." Tobi hummed thoughtfully, then he sneered at something. "Yes. The current impasse and my possession of the Kyuubi might make this to my benefit. From the look on your face, I take it you approve of my proposal. Toby drank the sake he had just poured and nodded. Leave Nagato to me, and I'm sure the samurai can be defeated quickly. After bowing, Hanzo got to his feet and left. After he was out of sight, he drank the contents of a vial he had hidden in his pants. Behind his mask, the salamander could only smile as he left the base. This is the end of Phase 1. The hospital at Konoha. Shizuka could be seen making her way from patient to patient, treating them as she went. Of course, Tsunade was usually right there by her side whenever a doctor made a diagnosis or performed a procedure. Shizuka recalled Iron Country and Naruto's suicide technique because of the influx of wounded shinobi brought here due to the conflict. The patients seemed to feel her sadness as a result of these recollections. Tsunade took note and suggested that she take the day off and go do something. After saying her thanks, she hurried to the restroom to change into her shinobi garb. She ran into Jiraiya as she was leaving the building. She sighed, "Oh, hey Jiraiya-sensei. What's eating you, Shizuka?" "If it's the war, I understand," the Toad Sage sighed, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Shaking her head, she said, "No, not this war, but the one Naruto almost lost his life in. My job at the hospital brings back the same memory over and over again." Jiraiya was aware of the topic at hand and opted to change the subject. "You know, whenever I was feeling down, Fuinjutsu was there to pick me up and distract me." "Well," Shizuka said with a wry grin, "if it worked for you, then why not? I need to stop home first to get supplies." With a grin on his face, Jiraiya shook his head. "Don't worry, I've got plenty here. Come." In the blink of an eye, they had arrived at some random field for practice. Jiraiya took a scroll out of his cloak and opened it. Suddenly, as Shizuka studied the paper and the paintbrush, inspiration struck. Jiraiya's eyebrows shot up at the sound of her gasp of surprise. "Is it possible, Jiraiya-sensei, for me to create a seal that prevents a Jinchuriki from activating? What do you think? I actually carry them with me. Would you like some for the upcoming war?" Shizuka scoffed, "No, not those flimsy things that only cut off the chakra. Rather, an actual seal which cuts off both chakra networks and paralyzes them simultaneously." Jiraiya expressed surprise by blinking his eyes. It was brilliant, but to complete in 2 days was unrealistic. Unless. It's possible, but we need to visit Minato's library to find out for sure. If my memory serves me correctly, he was trying to make a seal very similar to the one you described. Shizuka agreed and proceeded to ask a follow-up inquiry. A possible ocular bloodline seal could be, is there a seal which shuts down ocular bloodlines? The Toad Wiseman smiled this time. Shizuka blushed and Jiraiya laughed to himself, "Ah, I see. You were worried about Naruto and wish to help him if need be. Get some practice in, and remember that Minato's library is a great place to begin." More and more seal concepts emerged during her practice. A long-lasting seal and an additional sealing section were 2 of these concepts. The long-lasting seal could be applied to anything. The lowest level of this seal would be level 1. The durability of a given item would be graded accordingly. Violence including kunai, bombs, beginner jutsu, and more. The use of an extension seal on chained weapons would give the enemy a false sense of safety. In other words, the seal would make the weapon more effective. 1. Shizuka, who had prior experience with sealing matrices, made hasty notes and got to work. When Jiraiya noticed that Shizuka was doing something besides practicing, he decided to have a look at what the latter had written. To say that the sage was intrigued and amazed would be an understatement. "What are these, Shizuka?" She interrupted herself mid-work to say, "Brilliant, I know." After a moment of reflection, she said, "If I can get these done, Naruto's armor would be almost impervious." She then looked up at the sky. Perhaps a Biju bomb could be deflected by a level 10 durability seal. Jiraiya opened his mouth wide in shock, but quickly he cracked a grin. "Now that you have my full attention, young Uzumaki, it is time for old Jiraiya to demonstrate why he is a seal master, but first we must visit your home. Minato's library contains the information you seek." Shizuka nodded, her smile lighting up the room like a supernova. "Right now." As they approached Iwa, Naruto and Shizuka exchanged a reassuring glance. A prototype of the durability seal was finished. The highest level it could reach at the moment was 3, which was used on Naruto's armor and Shizuka's clothing. The extension seal was significantly more difficult and was still in the works. Shizuka came up with seals to counter a Jinchuriki and Toba's Sharingan, but Minato had already developed a working model of such a device. However, because of the Kyuubi invasion, they were never finished. That is, up until now. As they fled together, the two were aware that many lives would be lost in this conflict. Two people going against Toba's ideals were not anticipated. Shizuka decided to stop about halfway to Iwa in case any Iwa nin tried to sneak through. Since he would no longer have to worry about his girlfriend, Naruto approved of the plan. Once the kiss was over, Naruto left. Shizuka smiled sadly as she watched Naruto's vanishing form and said, "Stay safe, my love." As he approached the Iwa border, Naruto frowned and decided to turn around and look back. "May the wise ones of old watch over you, my lovely maiden." With a sigh, Naruto's emotions drained away, and his eyes became cold as ice. The time had come for the demonic warrior to display his formidable claws. "Can you say, 'Ready, Kurama?'" The fox scoffed, "Born ready, brat." Naruto agreed, took a cigarette out of his pack, and struck a match to it. With his right hand on Hanjo, he ran past the Iwa border after taking a few drags. After 3 minutes of running, Naruto stopped dead in his tracks as he heard footsteps behind him. He sat in the lotus position with Hanjo on his lap like a real samurai, waiting for the enemy to come to him. The Iwa patrol that Naruto could feel approaching stopped and stared in shock at the person in front of them as they rounded the bend in the path that led into the many mountains of rock country. The offspring of the Yondaime Hokage was their intended victim. With his eyes closed and his mind clear, Naruto removed the cigarette from his mouth and casually snuffed it on the ground. As Naruto reached into his armor and then into his kimono pocket, the shinobi patrol stiffened. When he produced a pack of cigarettes, they could finally relax. Naruto asked nonchalantly, "Care for a smoke, Shinobi-sans?" An angry growl came from the direction of the group's leader. "Look here, you samurai freak, our cage wishes to see your head on a pike. So stand up and fight." "Grr. No, I don't want no damn cancer stick. Tisk tisk tisk, no patience." "A great disadvantage in battle you have," Naruto frowned. Once more the leader scowled and gestured for his platoon to make the kill. As Naruto's pursuers closed in, he threw his pack of cigarettes into the air. After several Seiza no Bukata, only the leader remained. Alternately, trembling in terror. "You may lack patience, but at least you know better than to get sidetracked while fighting." The leader shouted and charged with 2 kunai, but Hanjo easily sliced them in half. The leader staggered back in disbelief once more. With cold blue eyes, Naruto said to the Iwa shinobi, "You wish to fight hand to hand. So be it." After putting Hanjo away, Naruto assumed the Aikido-ready stance and waited for his opponent to charge. He watched as the leader was reduced to a puddle of mud instead of charging. Naruto heaved a sigh and coolly sidestepped a kunai that was aimed at the back of his head. But as it passed, Naruto grabbed the ring and flung it back with double the force. The leader was caught off guard and ended up with his own weapon wedged between his eyes. Regrettably, these shinobi did not prove to be as formidable as their Iron Country counterparts. A number of whistles could be heard as Naruto rounded the same corner as the patrol. When he looked up, he saw a swarm of kunai hurtling toward him, some of which had explosive tags. Calmly, Naruto voiced his internal thought, ambush. Quite a predicament. So, he used a technique he's been perfecting ever since he first started studying the wind element. After adopting a horse stance, Naruto narrowed his eyes as he stared up at the falling kunai. He swiftly removed Hanjo from its sheath, charged it with wind ki, and slashed it upward. To their horror, the shinobi hiding in the mountains discovered that their attack did not cut the kunai but rather blew it off course. Some people even started to walk toward them. The mountain ranges around where Naruto was walking soon erupted in explosions, followed by the cries of wounded or dead Iwa shinobi. The training gloves had come off, and Naruto could feel an overwhelming force of shinobi coming toward him. "Get in gear, Kurama," the boss said. "Give them hell, brat, as in, like father, like son." When Naruto nodded, he activated the Kyuubi cloak. The addition of tails was premature. Yellow flashes, the shrieks of jutsu being sent at Naruto, and the cries of the dying soon filled the mountain pass. Naruto teleported to a shinobi above him, instantly slashed him to pieces, and then teleported to another shinobi who was mid-jutsu. The woman suddenly realized she was headless. As Naruto prepared to transition to a new world, he was suddenly surrounded by a swarm of rock bullets. Unfazed, Naruto leapt atop them to get a better view, slashed some in half, and blew others into a nearby mountain with his wind element. There was some doubt among the Iwa shinobi as to whether or not they could defeat this demon. And like so many others before them, Naruto found joy in hearing the rumors of Akuma no Senshi. The rumbling beneath his feet erased the grin from his face. He jumped to a nearby mountain, but he landed with a start and blinked in surprise. Over 200 Iwa shinobi were present on the leveled summit. As time went on, the rock walls that encircled Naruto began to close in on him. The situation became even more dire when he felt a rumbling beneath his feet. Quick on his feet, Naruto destroyed the wall in front of him by conjuring a miniature Bijudama on his right hand and then bolted for the door. The timing was impeccable, as rock spears immediately pushed past his previous position. And as he prepared to strike the enemy in front of him, he was caught off guard by one of Onoki's many jutsu. Freeing the winds, a major advancement. When Onoki floated down to check out his opponent, the Iwa shinobi began to retreat as soon as Naruto stood. The cage scoffed and said, "Naruto namikaze." Naruto said icily, "Onoki the fence-sitter." For what seemed like an eternity, the two tried to take each other down. Tense silence was broken by the howl of the wind through the mountains. But Naruto was the one to finally crack it. "Is it time to start the death dance?" The Tsuchikage's lips curled into a wry grin as he said, "Commence we shall." And Shizuka. While Shizuka kept a wary eye out for approaching foes, her mind began to wonder how Naruto was holding up. After what seemed like an eternity of reassuring thoughts, Shizuka finally seemed to shake her state of worry. And just in time, because she saw two foes charging at her full speed. At the identities of the two, she swore. "I can take on one of the Jinchuriki responsible for the destruction of the grass village, but not both of them at once. I must warn aim." After a few shunshuns, she was back in the village and able to locate Konan. The amicage initially appeared casual as she asked, "Ah, Shizuka, back already?" But her tone quickly turned serious upon taking in Shizuka's expression. "Report. The pair will arrive in 5 minutes at the earliest." Konan exclaimed, "Shit," as she palmed her face and sighed. After a brief pause, she met Shizuka's gaze. "Can you delay them in any way?" "I have a plan." Shizuka laughed and said, "Of course I can stall them. I'm the girlfriend of an Uzumaki for Kami's sake." "See to it then while I gather the forces," nodded Konan. Without delay, Shizuka shoeshined far beyond Aim's walls and began establishing seals. After that, she constructed a complex maze out of earth walls. She hoped the Jinchuriki would try to navigate the maze, but she had little faith that they would. After that, she buried herself using the hiding like a mole technique and made several Iwa and exploding clones. The bulk of them hid underground, while one potentially explosive clone remained on the surface. With everything prepared, Shizuka awaited the arrival of Han and Roshi. They got there quickly, and when Han saw the maze, he destroyed it with a mini Bijudama. But a barrier seal went into effect the moment both feet touched the debris. 10 identical clones of Iwa emerged from the ground once activated, trapping the Jinchuriki. The explosive clones beneath them went off once they were safe. After the dust settled, Han and Roshi were both dressed in their initial Biju robes. "That was a brave attempt," Roshi began. "It was pretty much a waste of time," Han concluded. The clone of Shizuka narrowed her eyes at the two, then shoeshined in front of Roshi to deliver a haymaker at Tsunade strength. Roshi sprouted a tail and impaled the clone, so it never made it to the ground. It finished its sentence with a smirk. Boom. 2 Iwa Bushin emerged from the ground after the clone exploded and made an attempt to plant the seals she and Jiraiya had been working on for the past 2 days. The fate of the 2 duplicates was the same as that of the original. Roshi scoffed, "Pathetic. Humans are nothing but a waste." Han merely nodded and glanced around at the other Jinchuriki for confirmation. Roshi went full Biju without warning, and Han followed suit. Shizuka's eyes widened as she descended below the surface. When she realized what technique the two were charging up, her face turned pale. "Let's hope the seals Minato found in his library are effective, because I can't let those hit aim." Shizuka shouted back at the oncoming force as she shoeshined quickly in front of the aim gates. "Listen to me. Stay behind me. Bijudama incoming." When the aim forces saw the 2 black orbs of death approaching, they became frightened. When they saw Shizuka lift 2 seals into the air, their apprehension turned to wonder. A vortex formed between the seals in an instant, engulfing the 2 Bijudama. Shizuka dropped to her knees as the AIM forces cheered, panting heavily from the intense use of chakra required to perform the seals. Despite her exhaustion, she smiled, knowing that her enemies were heading in the wrong direction. With Han and Roshi back in their original forms, they pondered the failure of their attacks. The answer came in the form of a pair of Iwa clones who appeared, placed 2 seals on the ground, waved goodbye, and vanished. When the Jinchuriki saw their own attacks coming at them, their pupils dilated in alarm. There was no place to hide or run. The ground and its surroundings were torn apart by a massive explosion. Konoha and Suna forces in AIM rushed to the scene as the smoke cleared to finish the job and check on the 2 Jinchuriki's fate. The Konoha 12 were excited to participate in their first battle as part of the Hidden Leaf's forces. As he ran alongside his pals, Kiba asked, "Think they survived?" "They're Jinchuriki. They always find a way to live and become thorns in everyone's side," sighed Neji. Tenten slapped the Hyuga on the back of the head angrily and said, "So Naruto's a thorn, is he?" Neji sputtered, No. I meant most Jinchuriki." 2 roars could be heard in the enormous dust cloud in front of them, and Shikamaru sighed, "See, women are troublesome." "That's it, then. You jinxed us, Kiba." Sasuke, the group's leader, yelled out instructions. "Tenten, Ino, Hinata, and Sai, I want you to stay behind to provide support and any medical aid any might need. The rest, follow me. We have 2 beasts to subdue. Stay focused, everyone. A Jinchuriki is something you can't play around." They all exclaimed, "Hi!" and then hurried back to their work. Auto. Kumo was being driven back by Auto forces, and it looked hopeless until a war cry was heard from the village across the sound. It was the arrival of Konoha and AIM. As the commander of the Kumo forces, Killer B could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The Jinchuriki looked up as a voice from above said, "Having a bit of trouble?" Murderer B chuckled and said, "Hokage-sama is here and there is no need to fear, fool ya fool." "Yes," Nagato agreed, "but this is just one of my paths. Relax your forces while mine and AIM do some damage." B nodded and turned to face his shinobi army. "You heard the man, he's no joke, now take a break, time for a smoke." The Preta path sighed at the awful rapping, but their attention was on the onslaught of Auto forces. It was time to instill a healthy dose of terror in them. Over 100 of their enemies were killed with just 2 words and a burst of chakra while one hand was extended toward them. The words, Shinra Tensai. The fight paused briefly as they observed the results of that single devastating technique. The force of gravity ripped apart some of the bodies, others were twisted into bizarre shapes, and still others bore the marks of the victim's own weapons. This was met with applause from the allied forces. They were too terrified of the enemy to say anything. The Praetaway yelled, "And let Kami humble you this day," before charging into the fray. As the fighting spilled out into the streets, the Sound Village was gradually destroyed by everything from fireballs to water dragons and everything in between. Knowing their intentions allowed Konoha and AIM to avoid certain buildings and areas of the village where traps had been set. That, and they were also prime ambush locations. As a result of this intelligence, the number of Auto warriors began to dwindle, but this was short-lived as reinforcements emerged from the tunnel system below. A figure looked on, smiling, as the sounds of battle erupted once more and the screams associated with injury and death were heard. After making a few gestures, smoke began to billow out from beside the figure. Manda hissed, "How dare you summon me, Orochimaru? I demand many sacrifices as payment. See that village over there? Destroy every last one of them with the power of the sound emblem." The snake boss was perplexed, but he put it out of his mind because he had food waiting for him. "All right then. Shall we?" The Preta path ducked under the shinobi's kunai slash in the sound village and then thrust a black rod through the shinobi's skull. As he whirled around, he unleashed 20 more Shinra Tensai blasts. When he was about to take a step forward, he heard a loud bang. When he realized who it was, his eyes narrowed in hostility, but his disbelief quickly replaced it as Orochimaru began slaughtering his own men. He bobbed his way toward the Sennin in search of information. Orochimaru watched as Nagato approached as Manda finished his meal. "Say it with me now. I want answers, Orochimaru. There's a lot you don't know about me, but you'll learn about it in due time, Nagato, or rather, along one of your paths." The Praetaway looked at Orochimaru with suspicion but nodded. "After we finish here, I expect you to turn yourself in. You have a lot to answer for." The snake Sennin scowled as the Praetoway resumed its fight. For what it's worth, I acknowledge this, and I do apologize for my past actions. I owe a debt of gratitude to the Dobi for helping to set me on the right path back when we were both much younger. Kiri's fleet was spotted in Wave's waters as the battle in Auto continued. The observers alerted Konoha immediately, praying that reinforcements would arrive in time to stop Kiri. Naruto included. It's been 5 minutes since Naruto and Onoki first started fighting. However, this conflict took place in the sky and not on the ground. In addition to keeping his wind ki under control, Naruto had to keep his mind on the impending battle. In this 5-minute taijutsu match, both competitors were strong and capable. When Onoki used his signature jutsu, the tide of the battle shifted dramatically. Separation from the Stone Age. When the attack hit the mountain behind him, it dissipated into dust, and Naruto was relieved to have avoided it. When Naruto's attention was once again on Onoki, he thought, note to self, avoid at all costs. In response to the Namikaze's expression of shock, Kage smirked and asked, not so tough now, are you samurai? When the Tsuchikage attempted to cut Naruto in half, he simply disappeared and reappeared in front of him. Unfortunately, it looked like a rock wall was in the way of the attack, and no hand signals were used. Still undeterred, Naruto followed up with a high kick that was successfully blocked. The Kage threw rock bullets and more of his signature technique at Naruto, but the former kept pressing his attack even as Onoki floated backward. When Naruto was hit by the dust release attack, he took the blow with a nearby rock bullet. After getting smoke on him, he mysteriously disappeared and repeated the process somewhere else. The Iwa shinobi watched in awe as Naruto hopped closer to Onoki, amazed that he was challenging their leader. Namikaze, your samurai training is useless in this situation. Naruto laughed as he fired off his final rock bullet, then suddenly appeared behind the Kage and punched him in the middle of the back with all his ki. While the Tsuchikage was still writhing in agony, Naruto beheaded it with a second slash. Onoki's life was spared by a quick earth wall from one of the shinobi spectators. I always thought samurai had honor, so I was surprised when he took such a cheap shot at my back. After dodging a wave of kunai from the spectating shinobi, Naruto sheathed Hanjo and said, hi, you are correct, but your back problems is just one of my many advantages here today. Likewise, and you, Onoki, are about to lose one of yours. The Kage looked on in horror as Naruto activated the Kyuubi cloak and disappeared. All 200 of his reinforcements were dead and scattered across the summit within a minute. Worse still? There was not a single drop of blood anywhere on Naruto's body. When Onoki whispered, you truly are his son. And you truly are a demonic warrior, Naruto noticed that the mind control was beginning to fail. He was about to try to rescue the Kage when the mind control kicked in again. This time, however, it appeared to be permanent. No. I am Toba's pawn, and I must obey his orders. He is the supreme ruler of this nation. With a groan, Onoki assembled the largest possible detachment of the primitive world. Which was so big that Naruto had to swallow it. He anticipated that it would destroy the majority of the land he and Onoki now occupied. Kit needs to be changed now because his brain is completely fried. The elemental nations have lost a great man today, Naruto sighed. Onoki's eyes widened as he readied his technique to fire and Naruto unleashed his full Biju. The real Kyuubi, not some illusory substitute. Hearing the Biju's roar, everyone turned their attention to Iwa, where they witnessed 9 red tails dancing among the mountains. They realized this was their only chance to save Taki. Shibuki yelled, prepare the forces. We move out in 5. Before glancing at the person in front of him. I'm sorry food didn't feel welcome in the village, but there's one last favor I need you to do for me. The question was posed, what is it, Shibuki-san? Make Iwa suffer, weaken them so much that they are no longer one of the great villages. With a nod, Fu said, hi, but do not expect me to return. This village has brought me too much pain. She promptly removed her headband and tossed it to the floor. She stomped on it several times before she turned and joined their shinobi forces. Bijudama. Separation from the Stone Age. The two approaches slammed into one another and struggled for dominance, but a minute later, they became unstable and exploded like a second sun. Even in Konoha, the roar of the explosion could be heard for miles. There was a huge explosion that sent a mushroom cloud into the sky and covered much of rock country in dust. Those who witnessed the assault were alarmed. Both sides were worried about the safety of their respective commanders, but Onoki's was the greater concern. While still in Kyuubi form, Naruto shook off the dirt and returned to his regular appearance. With just a few key blasts of wind, a significant amount of dust was blown away, revealing the destruction. Over a mile in diameter and roughly a half a mile deep, that's how big the crater had to be. The blast punctured an aquifer, allowing water to begin filling the crater. It was as if the entire landscape had been transformed, like the Valley of the End. Naruto tuned his senses in quickly as he heard coughing nearby. Then he picked up on a signature of energy that was familiar to him. As he finished the job, Naruto sighed, "Why am I not surprised the fence-sitter is still alive?" The Tsuchikage blew dust away with a series of great breakthrough coughs. Both his chakra and his back were beginning to give out on him. As he said, "Just wait until I get my hands on you, Namikaze brat." The cage jerked back, only to freeze when he felt the cold steel at his throat. Somberly, Naruto told Onoki-san, "I know you cannot be saved, and it pains me to have to end such a great man who has lived through hardships greater than my own. If it is any consolation, your death will be quick and painless." The mind control began to flinch again as Onoki whispered, "Do it. I just wanted to make things right with Konoha, not start a war, so please do this for my soul." When the cage nodded, Naruto brought Hanjo to his chest. When asked, "Are you ready?" In agreement, Onoki said, "Hi, I'm ready to come home." As he drove Hanjo through the cage's chest, Naruto's breath trembled. Onoki the fence-sitter died with a grin on his face and an upturned gaze toward the heavens. Naruto sighed and unsheathed Hanjo after wiping off the blood with a flick of his wrist. He picked up the cage's corpse and laid it down carefully. Naruto waved his hand and Onoki's eyes closed. "Why do the best always have to die, Kurama?" The fox sighed after being asked such a basic question. "Maybe that's just how the world operates, I have no idea, Kit." Naruto's attention was quickly drawn by the sound of clapping, and he looked around. Just 50 feet in front of him stood the original instigator. Uchiha Tobi or Obito. At home in Auto. An Auto shinobi asked as he ducked out of the way of a kunai slash, "Why is Orochimaru-sama attacking us? Have we done something wrong?" Manda's coils ensnared an additional Auto shinobi right before he could respond. The sight terrified the Konoha shinobi who was fighting the two opponents in front of her. She had seen the other Auto shinobi get eaten, so she shut her eyes in preparation for the same fate. When nothing happened, she opened her eyes and saw the Sanin's sad face. "Stand tall and fight for Konoha. Be the will of fire your Sandame has preached, something I have greatly dishonored, and you will not perish at my hands today." The shinobi who overheard him was perplexed as Orochimaru and Manda sped off to eliminate more of their own forces. They were all indoctrinated to believe that Orochimaru was a heartless monster. But his apologetic tone completely perplexed them. The shinobi that Orochimaru spoke to yelled, "I don't know why the snake bastard is helping us, but damn it, this is as good an opportunity as any. Invoking the power of flame, we cry, for the will of fire." The Konoha shinobi made their presence felt with a resounding war cry throughout the Sound Village. The fighting became more intense, and the Auto forces were quickly defeated. The Aim shinobi, not wanting to be outdone, let out their own war cry and returned to the fray. Orochimaru and the Sound Five would turn themselves in within an hour, and the Sound Village would disappear. Kabuto disappeared and was never located. Including the Konoha 112. As the coordinated attacks from the Konoha 12 began to bombard Han and Roshi, who were still in full transformation, they roared loudly. Tenten used the diversion created by Sai's relentless ink creations to fire multiple kunai into the air, which Sasuke then set ablaze with one of Madara's jutsu. Destruction by massive fire. In the face of this sweeping barrage of fire, they saw that their own attacks had done them no good at all. Kiba used his Super Fang Wolf Fang to surprise the Biju just as they were about to attack, killing all four of them. Son Goku had a moment of weakness before regaining his footing. The Biju then threw a punch in Kiba's direction. Neji, fully aware of the lethal nature of the attack, punched both hands toward the massive fist, sending a wave of chakra in its direction. Goku's fist was deflected, but the impact was so great that Kiba was sent flying back. However, Sai successfully captured him with one of his ink birds. "Nothing we can do will stop them," Shikamaru declared. "Biju can be a pain." Grunting, "Tell me about it." "Any ideas, guys?" Sasuke asked. The Five Tails ducked its head and pounced before they could even begin to discuss it. In close proximity, Sasuke and the others could only watch in horror, knowing they couldn't possibly dodge in time. The shinobi around them wisely erected a sturdy earthen wall. Quick thinking allowed Sai to dispatch inkbirds to retrieve his fellow soldiers. Kakuo smashed through the walls like they were made of tissue paper, so the timing couldn't have been better. Some of the shinobi on the ground were injured by flying debris, but no one was killed. The four tails zeroed in on the Konoha 12, punched the ground to create a volcano, and the five tails went to charge again. There was a release of the flower fruit mountain. Their lives flashed before the eyes of the Konoha 12, and any aim or Konoha shinobi who happened to be nearby. Everyone understood that the lava could easily melt any material. Shizuka and her duplicates, then Konan, appeared out of nowhere. While Shizuka secured the ground with her barrier seals, Konan used her unique paper ninjutsu to do the same thing from above for the massive allied force. As of right now, the defenses were holding after the attack. Both Shizuka and Konan were aware that their happiness was temporary. As loudly as he could, Konan yelled, "Retreat! Head back to aim!" "But what about you and Shizuka?" Hinata exclaimed anxiously. Shizuka smiled to Iwa and the other members of the Konoha 12. "It is time for you to depart. Our efforts will not be forgotten." Some of the shinobi began to object, but Sasuke, having learned about war from Itachi, was prepared. "The ladies have spoken. Now be quiet and get going." To allow the shinobi to retreat, the barrier lowered in the back, which opened up gaps in the defense. Konan and Shizuka exchanged a sad smile as the volcano kept spewing lava and the five tails began to ram the barrier. The somber statement from Konan made Shizuka nod her head in agreement. "Our boyfriends will be devastated after today." "I'm sorry, my love, but I fear that if I die, Naruto will follow suit." Two enormous salamanders fell on top of the Biju just as the barrier was about to fail and the two was about to welcome death with open arms. Both of them heaved a sigh of relief as the jutsu ended. When they saw Hanzo on a summons, their breath caught. As he spoke, Hanzo fixed Konan and Shizuka with a stern look. "Don't just stand there, because I can't keep holding them forever." Konan questioned, "You're helping us. Why? After everything you've done, after all the people you killed." "Explanations can wait," Hanzo moaned. "Damn it, woman. Now, can someone seal these damn pests?" Without a word, Shizuka nodded and quickly duplicated herself to have two clones apply the seals to the Biju. After using the salamander summoning, Han and Roshi returned to their normal selves. Konan glared angrily at Hanzo before binding the unconscious Jinchuriki in paper. "You're coming with us, and there's a lot you need to explain." The former AIM shogun could do nothing but nod and go along with Orochimaru's plan. Shizuka turned around as they were reversing course and stared back in the direction of Iwa, site of the devastating blast. "Naruto needs my help, I can tell he's in trouble. Go. Make sure our commander comes back to us safely," Konan said with a grin and a nod in her direction. Shizuka veered in the direction of Iwa and took off running. "Wait here for me, Naruto. I'm getting there." Country of Waves. As the Kiri fleet got closer to shore, the shinobi of Konoha started to get nervous. The fleet of ships would soon be within range of the kunai launchers. Konoha shinobi lined the shoreline in preparation for defending Wave as civilians huddled in evacuation shelters hastily constructed by Earth users. As the fleet approached in the distance, the sun was quickly obscured by a dense mass of black clouds. A shinobi from Konoha yelled, "Incoming!" causing all jutsu users on Earth to begin their attacks. However, when they saw Nagato approaching, they stopped making the gestures. The shinobi were all cheering as their Hokage used gravity control to halt the kunai rain and send it back toward the fleet. As the kunai fell from the sky, Nagato conjured a small black ball in his hand and hurled it at the enemy. Exclaiming, "Chibaku Tensai!" Suddenly, the ships began to drift toward the black orb, followed by the surrounding water and land. The shinobi of Konoha could only look on in wonder as their Hokage fashioned a miniature moon. The growing debris ball was accompanied by the sounds of fleet breaking apart and people screaming as they were crushed. After waiting for 2 minutes, Nagato finally unleashed his technique, sending the tiny moon crashing into the water with a resounding thud. As his name was repeatedly called out, Nagato smiled, but his grin faltered as he experienced an emotional upheaval. A stab of discomfort. "I hope everything is okay with you, cousin." Iwa. As the first wounded patients arrived, the shinobi sprang into action. The Hidden Rock village was a hive of activity that never seemed to stop. As a result, they stopped taking adequate precautions and Taki and Suna were able to approach the village. Fu and Gaara, their respective Jinchuriki, led their respective armies. They happened to run into each other at the same time and immediately began plotting something. Gaara continued in his usual tone, "Fu, a pleasure to meet a fellow Jinchuriki such as myself. The pleasure is mutual, Gaara, but we must destroy a village. If today goes as planned, one of the nation's major settlements will be destroyed forever." In agreement, Fu asked, "So, any idea on how to do this? I can't go full Biju just yet." In a sardonic tone, Gaara said, "I can, but it is very hard to control. Shukaku has a thing for blood." A recommendation was made by Asuna Shinobi. "If given the green light, Gaara-san, I can send a team to plant explosives in the Cage Tower, Ambu headquarters, and their hospital thanks to my expertise in infiltration and sabotage." Fu spoke up while Gaara hummed thoughtfully. To quote one author, "Blowing up the hospital will kill innocent lives though." With a stern look at his fellow Jinchuriki, Gaara said, "And how many innocents has Iwa killed?" "This is war, Fu, there are no innocent lives. Only enemies or allies." He then turned to the shinobi who made the suggestion. "We'll wait for the explosions to die down before we enter the village, so round up your troops and finish the mission." The shinobi bowed to Gaara-san and then gathered her team. Naruto included. Toby cast a glance at Naruto with his Sharingan eye, a smile tucked away behind the mask. "Hello Naruto, I have waited so long for this day to come. But by the end of it, you will suffer the same fate as your parents. The Kyuubi will be mine, and I will revel in your screams as I slowly rip it from your seal." Naruto's expressionless stare did not waver. He showed no signs of anger at anything Toby said. "You may think the samurai way is a farce, but just like the great man who lay dead beside me, you too will be humbled. I too have waited for this day, but I know I have much to learn before I best you in battle." Toby inspected Onoki's happy face from below. While Obito was busy rounding up the Kyuubi, Naruto's cage died by his side. Fortunately, his mask kept his expression of shock hidden. "It's possible that this fight is more difficult than I anticipated. To quote, I am tired of all this fighting, tired of all this war. I lost my master to such an event, but such was the path he chose. And now, I have chosen mine. I am not after your head for revenge, no, I am after your head solely for the purpose of bringing peace to this land." "There can be no peace, there never has been, and there never will be," Toby snorted. "Peace. Please, everyone will be under my thumb once I capture the Biju." With a sigh, Naruto lowered himself to a half-sitting position. "Enough chit-chat. How about a dance?" Toba's mask-hidden grin broadened as his Sharingan whirled around and settled on the M's shape. He reached into the whirlpool beside him and extracted his battle fan. "Yes. This will be a beautiful dance." Volunteering to infiltrate Iwa, the Suna shinobi made a hand signal for her team to halt. They had made it inside, but the real work of planting the bombs and escaping undetected had just begun. She took a swift glance around, identifying potential targets for the group. She made hand signals to convey her instructions to the group after she had mentally mapped out their strategy. The plan called for 3 Suna shinobi to eliminate the 3 on the roof of the hospital before using the ventilation shafts to sneak down to the basement and eliminate any high-value targets they encountered. Kuretsuchi, Onoki's granddaughter, was one such victim. They would hide explosives inside the ductwork as they made their way through it. A team of 10 shinobi, 5 Suna and 5 Taki, would sneak into the Ambu headquarters and plant explosives in the personal armory. She was tasked with sneaking into the cage tower without anyone else on the mission with her. She understood the danger of this move, but it paled in comparison to sending an entire team in that direction. Fortunately, the cage tower was incorporated into a mountain and could be climbed. Any crack or crevice could be used to hide explosives, as could the floor beneath the cage's seat. Now that they had their orders, the workers got to work. The group's leader saw the hospital staff use an invisibility jutsu and quickly disappear. The 3 guards on the roof were assassinated by the 3 Suna shinobi 5 minutes later while holding the right side of their necks. Before beginning to remove the vent cover and descend, they each gave their leader a thumbs up. The Ambu leader then realized that one of his men had killed one of his men in secret and was wearing his clothes to sneak into the compound. They took hostages from within their own group. Everything had gone as planned, and it was finally her turn to take action. "Alright, folks, I see you're all set up and ready to go. The leader hid at the base of the cage tower using an invisibility jutsu and began ascending by charging her feet with chakra. Each crack she passed through on her ascent would have an explosive tag inserted into it. It took her 10 minutes to climb to the bottom of the window that overlooked the workplace. She would sneak peeks inside, only to discover each time that it was empty. She gambled with a gleaming grin on her face. Let's see how many damaging records I can compile. They say that the best way to bring down a community is to steal its darkest secrets. She fished a diamond out of one of her vest pockets before entering the office. She cut a circle in the glass and cautiously popped it out as a look of determination crossed her face. She sneaked into the office and quickly headed to the desk to check if there was a secret button. To her surprise, Iwa was the latter, despite the fact that nearly all of the other major villages had something similar. Dazed, she reached for the closest bookshelf. A click could be heard from behind her as she flipped through the books. When she looked down, a raised section of the wooden floor met her gaze. A trap door? It makes sense. Once the hatch was wide open, she climbed inside and discovered the prize. It was a massive trove of records dating back to the establishment of the settlement. She smiled and took a scroll for sealing out of her vest. She was finishing up some paperwork when she heard the office door open and footsteps head toward the trapdoor, which she had forgotten to close. The Suna Shinobi entered the hidden room with the stealth of a cat and pounced on her prey the moment they peered inside. She swiftly snapped the enemy's neck and made up her mind to get out of there. She left the hidden room and locked the door 2 minutes later, leaving the dead Iwa Shinobi inside. However, before she left the office, she planted time-detonated explosive tags under the desk. A short time later, the infiltrators returned to Gaara and Fu after having reached the rendezvous point. Results achieved. Naruto included. The man in the orange mask trained his M's on Naruto in an attempt to perform a genjutsu, but Naruto simply closed his eyes and stood there motionless. Obito's patience was wearing thin. Something that didn't go unnoticed by Naruto. Anger is a blinding, defeating emotion, so I don't know why you're acting so angry, Obito. The Uchiha remained silent, but he did take a deep breath. When Obito finally did act, Naruto was already in the middle of a daring impromptu maneuver. Even though his sensei disapproved, Naruto knew he couldn't fight this one. He was well aware of his physical limitations after losing so much energy in the battle with Onoki. To win, all it would take was for Obito to make a mistake, but Naruto realized this was also true for himself. Running at full speed, Obito inhaled deeply before releasing a jet of flame that began to corkscrew once he was close enough. His Kamui strengthened a corkscrew. Obito smirked, thinking the fight was over as the flames engulfed Naruto. At that point, he noticed that the fire was gradually dying down and eventually going out. His adversary suffered no burns whatsoever. Funny thing about wind, thought Naruto, is that it can both fan the flames and put them out if there's too much of it. Tobi had no time to respond before he was blown back by a powerful wind from Naruto. His Sharingan alerted him to the oncoming blade, and his pupils widened as he was pushed back. Just in time, he used his battle fan to deflect Hanjo's attack. Naruto recoiled and resumed his half-seated position, eyes closed. With a hint of concern, Kurama said, "Kit, you need me. This battle will be our end if we don't transform." As he sighed to himself, Naruto thought, "I understand, Kurama, but I will not let this man control you again. I need to redefine my limits, to see how far I can push myself. To see how much more I have to improve." The fox just leaned his head on his front paws, grinning contentedly. To paraphrase, "Thank you, and know that I will be here when you need me." After agreeing, Naruto used false darkness jutsu from Obito to quickly dispel a lightning strike with a gust of wind. When he did, he felt a kick coming from behind and rolled forward to avoid it. After getting to his feet, Naruto slashed at Obito with Hanjo. However, because the Uchiha had become intangible, no harm was done. Here is where Obito first noticed something wasn't right. After 3 Kamui, he was already at half chakra, and he was confused as to why. His eyes widened as he recalled his encounter with Hanzo. "When I get my hands on you, Orochimaru, you will pay for being such a useless piece of garbage." Obito hesitated, and Naruto took advantage of the opening to land 2 kicks to the Uchiha's midsection before pinning him to the floor with a grapple. When Naruto went to kill Hanjo, the Uchiha disappeared. Our samurai shrugged and assumed the lotus position on the floor, waiting for Tobi to return. In no time at all, Naruto was dodging earth spears with a combination of jumping and flying. All the while, he could sense that Obito's aura was dwindling, as if his chakra were being rapidly depleted. Naruto narrowed his eyes in confusion, but he decided to save his investigation into the cause for later. He had to fight and triumph. As Naruto ducked under another earth spear, Obito lunged at him from behind, kunai in hand, through a kamui. The swift backflip in the air that Naruto attempted ultimately cost him his life. Naruto's grip on his wind ki suddenly loosened, and he began to fall rapidly. Obito beamed and unleashed a jutsu of fire that was a particular favorite of Madara's. Destruction by massive fire. As the wide swath of flames swept toward him, all Naruto could do was watch in horror. Iwa. Even more so after the infiltration team returned safely and detonated the explosives as they arrived, Gaara and Fu were all smiles. The Hidden Rock village was in complete anarchy as the two Jinchuriki shouted orders to their respective teams. Since the hospital had been reduced to rubble and no one had managed to escape, there were no doctors or nurses available to treat those who had been injured by shrapnel or had recently returned from the front lines. Since the Ambu headquarters had been destroyed, there was no longer an elite force to help defend the village. Few Junin stayed behind in Iwa while the rest went to battle. Inside the village, most of the remaining shinobi were Chunin and Genin. Although the cage tower and the document cache took significant damage, both survived. Kuretsuchi, who was in the tower at the time and received minor injuries, was determined to find out whether or not Iwa's dirty little secrets were secure once she had recovered. Her face paled as she entered the hidden room and saw the dead Iwa shinobi inside, followed by the missing paperwork. Immediately after escaping the crumbling tower, Kuretsuchi began behaving like a cage by issuing orders to the remaining troops inside the village. As soon as the Taki and Suna troops jumped the walls, they slaughtered everything in their path. As Kuretsuchi prepared to go into hiding to protect Iwa's future, two people materialized next to her. One had a three-pronged scythe strapped to his back, while the other wore a face mask. Both wore black cloaks with red clouds. Kakuzu, Hidan. Kami, I thank you. Hidan saw Gaara and Fu and beamed, oh happy day. Lots of heathens to kill in. Let the fucking sacrifices begin, as the speaker exclaims. Ooh, 2 Jinchuriki for the price of 1. Fuck y'all. Kakuzu's usual piercing gaze was directed at Onoki's granddaughter as Hidan laughed maniacally and charged into battle. He paused for a moment, then continued, run along child, we will hold off these brats while you ensure Iwa's future. Just tell me how much you're willing to pay for my assistance before I leave. Crossing her arms over her chest, Kuretsuchi shot an icy stare at the S-ranked nin. If you make it back to us alive, we can probably figure something out. If I had to choose between protecting your pitiful village and taking your heart, I would choose to die. She shot back without hesitation. Take my heart, all right, but don't count on getting paid for it. Fight like a good little servant. Kakuzu glared at the granddaughter, shoved her aside, and went to help Hidan. Gaara was using his sand to decimate a group of Iwa nin when he glanced over to see Fu grow wings and fly away from the incoming kunai. The Suna Jinchuriki took stock of the situation and saw that his own and Taki's forces were moving forward at a much quicker clip than he had expected. A percentage that made Gaara grin. It looks like Iwa sent their best troops to deal with Naruto and the smaller villages. All that's left for me to do is... Sand stopped Hidan's scythe from beheading him, cutting off his train of thought. His eyes widened in surprise at the sight of this ninja of such high rank. All of the elemental nations were now aware of all Akatsuki members thanks to Jiraiya's informant. Even with Shukaku's help, Gaara knew he would lose this fight. I can hear you, Tanuki. Could you please lend a hand? The Ichibi beamed with joy and prepared to take control of his host, but Fu's collision with Gaara prevented him from doing so. The two Jinchuriki got to their feet quickly after realizing that today was probably their last. Not good, Gaara. We're not prepared for an opponent of that caliber. Gaara agreed and threw sand at Hidan to deflect another of his maniacal blows. For the sake of yourself and those around you, I ask that you not come anywhere near me while I carry out my plan to destroy this village. Fu initially intended to disobey, but the vibe she got from the other Jinchuriki made her change her mind. Nonetheless, she did offer some final remarks. Please contact us again. Gaara let out a sigh and glanced at the two Akatsuki agents standing before him. It's okay to use Shukaku now. When Hidan saw his opponent roll up in a ball of sand to avoid being attacked, he backed off. Kakuzu. What the fuck is going on? The old nin groaned inside, but spoke with his usual lack of expression. He let Shukaku take control. There's no point in going after the other one right now. Hidan was about to retaliate with a direct attack when he was slashed in half by Shukaku's claw. The Biju looked down at the two humans below him and exclaimed, "Yaw. I'm free, baby. Look, dinner is already on the table." Shukaku was about to stomp on the Jushinist's two halves when Kakuzu yanked him out of the way with his tendrils. However, he simultaneously stitched the hapless cretin up. That hurt like hell, man. The two Akatsuki members narrowly escaped being killed by an enormous air bullet that wiped out a sizable chunk of Iwa. Putting sand between his feet and the ground allowed Shukaku to move quickly despite his height and weight. The Biju was, in a way, riding the waves. Needless to say, Kakuzu was caught off guard and was punted like a football. The back wall of the cage office took the full force of his body as he fell through the window. The impact was sufficient to rip out one of his hearts. The ancient shinobi mused, "Interesting, it seems like the host still has some form of control," before glancing at his charred heart and resigning himself to his fate. To be serious, it seems, is a necessity. Kakuzu's body was cut in three to symbolize his three different types of love: water, earth, and lightning. He signaled for them to jump out the window and proceed toward his objective. Hidan was doing his best to avoid the Biju's sand, but it was getting on his nerves. 4 buildings have been slammed into him so far. Motherfucker, put down the structures and stay put, damn it. Shukaku merely chuckled as he attempted to squash the insect with his bare feet. The water dragon and false darkness jutsu wiped out that grin, though. How dare they mess with the great Shukaku? In retaliation, Kakuzu threw Hidan, who was then helped along by a gust of wind. He slashed across the Biju's face with his 3-pronged scythe, missing its eye by a hair's breadth. In a fit of rage, Shukaku managed to flick the Jushinist mid-fall, causing him to dive a little deeper into the earth. The Biju paid the price for their distraction as Kakuzu launched an attack using the 4 elements he had not used. Both Shukaku and Gaara let out agonized screams as they were simultaneously struck. Fu and the other allies cast a worried glance back, wondering if they, too, were doomed. These ideas vanished when help arrived from unexpected quarters. Although they were all dressed in Iron Country samurai armor, none of them acted the part. They looked and acted like a hybrid of the two. After Fu saw one of the group members point at her, another sprinted over to help her. When Fu saw the mysterious man raise his hands in surrender, she relaxed into a less combative stance. In brief, my group and I are rebels from the recent war in Iron Country, and we wish to aid you in battle. Half of my men can help you, and I'll take a team to aid the giant sand raccoon. Hold your attack, milady. I come on Naruto-sama's orders. Fu laughed off the man's name for him, Shukaku, but still nodded and replied briefly. Do as you please, but know that if any deceit is shown, I will not hesitate to end you and your platoon. Know that I don't trust you fully. But your help is appreciated. The rebel commander dropped to one knee and signaled his men with his hands. In a flash, they were on their way. The leader turned a mournful gaze back to Fu. We were all duped by the same leader, and we're not going to stand by and watch our country collapse. The leader immediately left to assist Gaara. For a moment, Fu simply stood there, contemplating the events in Iron Country. After this war was over, she knew that meeting Naruto would be one of her top priorities. Aim. The Preta path of Nagato, including Orochimaru, the Sound Five, and the rest of the Konoha and Suna forces, had just arrived. The Kumo were getting ready to head back to their village, but they were keeping a few people around in case AIM and Konoha needed help. As soon as Orochimaru and his Sound Five arrived in the village, Konan led them straight to the place where Hanzo was being held. When Hinata, who was passing by, looked at Kimimaro with her Byakugan, she screamed in shock. The one with the 2 dots on his forehead is the one I need to see immediately, Konan-san. There's something off about his chakra. It was clear from the Amikage's tone that she was mildly irritated. Please explain why I should trust you with the care of a prisoner. Hinata gave the cage the cold shoulder and spoke to him in the same tense manner. I don't care what you think, because an enemy can become an ally, and I swore to protect anyone, friend or foe, as a medic, so please let me take care of this man before he dies of whatever ails him. Orochimaru interrupted Konan just as he was about to retort. You're right. His name is Kimimaro, and he does have a diseasia one that I am unable to treat. Maybe Tsunade can help you. Ku. Hinata gave a frowning nod to Konan, eliciting a grin from the Hyuga. Come with us, Kimimaro. Sakura, Ino, and I are all students of Tsunade, and together we will discover the cause of your illness." A grateful Kaguya smiled and mumbled, "Thank you." After entrusting Kimimaro to Hinata, Konan took Orochimaru to see Hanzo in his cell. Once inside, she gave them both a look that said, "Explain now or face the consequences." The Snake Sennin chose to take care of business early on. From working with Danzo to conducting those experiments, it's all true. However, Jiraiya eventually led me to the truth, and I deeply regret my past actions because of it. The year following the Kyuubi attack, in flashback, Jiraiya had made it his life's work to track down and bring back his missing partner Orochimaru ever since he left Konoha 2 years ago. Both the Toad Sage and Hiruzen Sarutobi were saddened by Orochimaru's tragic end. Tsunade's departure from the village 5 days after the Kyuubi attack only made things worse. His spy network was created to conceal Konoha's weakened condition. Up to this point, it had been effective. Right now, Jiraiya is relaxing with a bottle of sake at a bar in Tanzakugai after a hard day at the office. As he handed the cash to the bartender, he took a quick glance around and was taken aback to see a familiar face sitting alone in a far corner. He stole some sake from the bartender and then went to confront his former teammate. Jiraiya sat down and uncorked the bottle, saying, "Orochimaru. Dobi, I took you by surprise." The Toad Sage shrugged after taking a sip of the rice alcohol and responded, "There is a lot of mystery in the shinobi world." Orochimaru grabbed Jiraiya's bottle of sake, downed it, and returned it before he could continue. After a long, tense moment of silence, the snake broke the silence with a heavy tone. Jiraiya had to put down his drink as Orochimaru continued, "Do you know why I did what I did, Dobi?" "Oh, the dark secrets of Konoha I would reveal to you if only I had the time." "Konoha is not a dark place, Teme," Jiraiya said, his eyes narrowing. "It has prospered since it was founded. Until the Kyuubi attack. My knowledge of the criminal underworld in Konoha and the events of the past year would stun you, but alas, you have no use for such information." Orochimaru took a sip of the sake that Jiraiya had given him and then returned it. At this point, the Toad Sage's voice grew icily distant. "Stop avoiding the issue. Just tell us why you did what you did that caused Sensei and me so much anguish." Sighing, "Ku, so. The old monkey still blames himself," Orochimaru said. To which I reply, "And here the blame should be put solely on me for following an old fool's ideals. That's what I call, speaking Teme." Orochimaru sighed and the Snake Sennin said, "I may be powerful, but the man I followed even gave me the chills. He's the one who twisted my mind, to do the things I'd done. I thought his ideals were pure. He promised me untold amounts of power. But he was only the puppet master and I was just a pathetic marionette." Jiraiya attempted to identify this person using the information provided by his teammate but came up empty. The sadness with which Orochimaru spoke, however, greatly surprised him. The white shinobi rarely displayed such a feeling. Jiraiya greeted me with a friendly, "Look, Teme. Incredibly, I can sense your fear of this mysterious man, and I'm here to help. I can help free you from this burden, protect you from your past. Hell, maybe we can erase it. Maybe, in time, you can apologize to Sensei in person." Orochimaru grinned widely for the first time in years. "Tell me, what do you know of my childhood, the pain which I had to endure?" Ku, always the one to cheer us up when we're down. I never admitted it before, but I saw you as my first true friend, yet I always doubted you due to always lacking in skill." Jiraiya's mouth opened in surprise, but he quickly clamped it shut. There was nothing that could be said, as this was a taboo subject for Orochimaru to discuss. The Sennin chuckled at that. "We have a lot to talk about, so, Ku, come along, Dobi." The two Sennin left the bar and made their way to safety. A new friendship blossomed and old grudges were set aside here. Exit reminiscence. After Orochimaru finished his story, Konan's brow furrowed. "Was your youth really that terrible?" The Sennin cast a wistful glance downwards. "Oh my gosh, what a horrible youth. When one's own parents conducted experiments on them, how can they possibly have such a thing?" There were gasps of surprise from the audience. Never before have I been so ghostly white or possessed of such serpentine features. The norm was me. The same as any other citizen of this country. With tears in his eyes, Orochimaru finally looked up. Something that caught everyone present off guard. 5 years. It's been 5 years. The norm was me. Probed and prodded, then confined to a test tube where it will remain forever. When I turned 6, my parents finally showed me affection. They said sorry, gave me shinobi training and the snake contract. Then, 2 years later, they tried to kill me in my sleep. You retaliated by killing them, and then you ran away to Konoha. Interrupted by Conan. Orochimaru indicated his agreement with a nod. Sensei found me outside the gates and took me in, but I was always quiet because of my upbringing. It's also the reason I was so brilliant and accomplished in all my endeavors. Tayuya took a deep breath and mustered up the courage to ask. Then why the F*** did you start killing orphans in experiments? For those who knew Orochimaru, including Conan, his single word of speech made complete sense. Danzo. Naruto included. As the flames advanced, the intense heat became increasingly uncomfortable. Naruto's wind key suddenly stopped working, but at least he had his thoughts. The primary concern, however, was finding a way to avoid becoming ash, so the other one was set aside. Kurama, do you have any good ideas? The Biju flashed a grin. Burp with my chakra. Naruto's brows went up mentally. I apologize. What the heck? In a snarl of rage, Kurama commanded, shut the hell up and do as I say. Sting ya. However, when Naruto followed instructions, he sped up his descent toward the ground. Even though the lake he and Onoki created was still surrounded by flames, Naruto couldn't help but crack a grin. The flames burned nearly half of his body despite his successful escape into the vast body of water. Before Naruto even reached the water, Obito heard his scream of pain, and he grinned. I knew the samurai were wimps, so what did I expect? He was about to leave when he was stopped in his tracks by a flurry of kunai. A large army composed of Konoha, AIM, and Suna forces, with some Iron Country insurgents interspersed among them, could be seen off in the distance. After using a jutsu, Obito's chakra was still draining rapidly, and this made him growl angrily. He knew he was hopeless against such a force, but that didn't stop him from trying. He swung his war fan, creating a tremendous windstorm, as the army charged. More than 100 soldiers were thrown in the air, but most were caught by their teammates. There were only minor injuries. I'd compare you to cockroaches when I say, you pests are worse than cockroaches. After hearing a rebel from the Iron Country make a snide remark, Obito let out a low growl of anger. A self-fulfilling bimbo is worse than a cockroach. Shizuka dove into the new lake in search of Naruto as Obito completely lost control and activated his Susanoo. Shizuka rescued Naruto and returned to the surface as Obito began annihilating the opposing forces. Once on solid ground, she disarmed him and began performing CPR. Damn it. Please don't give up on me now, we have a family to start. She yelled, pausing intermittently to have her chest compressed. After this, Naruto coughed up some water while making a painful face. Although his vision was blurry, he caught a glimpse of someone's impressive bust. That flush became more noticeable after she came into focus. A snare that Shizuka managed to fall into. Fun later, but for now I will heal you so that you can get back in the action. Naruto agreed, then cracked a wry grin. Without warning, he squeezed his lovely bride's right breast, causing her to eep in shock. Not long after, there was a loud smack. A frown forming on his face, Naruto rubbed the bruise on his left cheek. Shikamaru is correct. Women are a source of conflict. Kurama found the whole thing hilarious and couldn't contain his laughter. It was as good as gold. Shizuka healed her love, and then she returned the favor by groping Naruto, causing him to give a startled little shriek. The huge kiss put an end to her gasp. When they finally did, they locked gazes. Both of their eyes glinted with mischief. As the saying goes, someone's feeling a little frisky. After a moment of hesitation, Naruto pushed himself to his feet and began putting his armor back on. The long-lasting seals ensured that nothing was broken. To show her displeasure, Shizuka crossed her arms. I'm horny because you started it. It's perfect. After a brief chuckle, Naruto yelled loudly at his disciple. Silence, you obnoxious furball. Not funny at all. Shizuka put her hands over her mouth to stifle a chuckle, but she couldn't help herself. The cries of agony quickly jarred them out of their reverie. Naruto first saw Obito's Susanoo here. Love. With his gaze returning to the blue icebergs, Naruto asked emotionlessly. Is there anything you could give me that would stop his Sharingan? Shizuka smiled wryly. I seriously doubted you'd ever inquire. Obito laughed hysterically as he slashed his way through enemies with Susanoo's phantom sword, but the poison in his system rendered it ineffective after only 2 minutes. Despite suffering severe casualties, the Allied force was prepared to renew its offensive. Until a mist rolled in and a maniacal laugh echoed through the air. As the mysterious figure in the mist continued speaking, many Junin from the Allied forces immediately recognized their new foe. It appears that Tobi-sama is being humiliated in front of a samurai by some commoners. Tobi glared at the man with the shark head next to him. "Do your damnedest, Kisame. I have to go." With a toothy grin, the Seven Swordsman member infused the mist with more chakra and made his way stealthily toward the allies. Obito, who had just turned to leave, ducked behind a bush to avoid being cut by Hanjo's sword. Even though he was unharmed, the attack split his mask down the middle. His identity was finally out in the open. Obito, however, never had time to ponder such matters. Instead, he could only try to avoid getting hit as much as possible by Naruto's relentless barrage of Tatehiza no Bu and other kata. Obito began bleeding from various cuts on his body, some deeper than others, due to low chakra and the Susanoo draining much of his stamina. Obito reacted quickly, playing a trump card that he knew would leave him with enough chakra to do one Kamui when Naruto paused to set up for a lunge. "Namikaze, you have been a pain in the neck long enough. The Shodai Hokage will make his presence known." Christmas in a forest. The rumbling and cracking of the ground caused Naruto to falter momentarily. Rapidly emerging from the ground, trees attempted to ensnare Naruto with their branches. Naturally, this action also weakened Kisami's grip on his mist, allowing a single individual to move through it. Jiraiya emerged from hiding on a nearby mountain ledge with his right leg extended as Naruto and Hanjo chopped down branches and jumped from one to the next. Kisame felt someone approaching from his right, but by the time he turned to look, it was already too late. A kick from the Toad Sage sent the blue-skinned swordsman crashing into the nearby rock face. As Jiraiya took stock of the situation, he noticed that his godson was holding his own against one of the Shodai's jutsu, that the allies looked relieved, and that a Shizuka was inching his way stealthily up Obito's rear. "Retreat, allies. We've got this under control, but I appreciate your assistance nonetheless. Get back to aim for medical care. Those who have fallen today will be rescued tomorrow." An enthusiastic, "Hi Jiraiya-sama." A Junin gave a salute and signaled for everyone to fall back. The Toad Sage slammed his hands down on the ground here after making some signs with his hands and biting his thumb. Two familiar summons arrived in a cloud of smoke. Mom and Dad. In other words, Jiraiya boy. It's wonderful to have you back. How many servings of vegetables do you eat per day? The wise man sighed and replied, "Yes ma, I have, but we have bigger things to worry about." Pa turned to look at the shark man who had just dug himself out of the mountain he had been embedded in as the rage-filled roar of Kisame filled the area. "A formidable foe, Jiraiya boy," Pa said with a grin, and the two of them climbed atop Ma's summoner's shoulders. "Now I understand why you had to call us." They all did the right things, including closing their eyes, to enter Sage mode. Once inside, Jiraiya stared at the massive water dragon coming toward him without showing any signs of emotion. He puckered his lips and let out a big flame bullet without pausing for reflection. When the two jutsu met, they created a cloud of mist that spread throughout the area. When he returned to the forest with Naruto, he stood atop a newly formed branch. The jutsu had concluded, and it was time to find out where Obito was hiding. Kurama activated his negative sensing by activating his Kyuubi cloak. Just in time, too, because Obito had materialized from behind a tree, kunai in hand, intending to decapitate Naruto. After dodging it, Naruto grabbed the ring and flung it back with twice the force of the Iwa Nin he had previously killed. Naruto delighted in hearing the squelch as it made contact with his skin. Just as Obito was about to launch another attack, Naruto appeared from nowhere, kicked the Uchiha in the midsection, and disappeared again. The leader of the Akatsuki was flung forward with a sickening crack. Naruto, expanding his senses, picked up Shizuka's presence. He popped up next to Obito, smiled, and booted the latter to the floor. When Naruto finally went down, he called out to his girlfriend. "Say it with me. Now, Shizuka." Something was placed on the back of Obito's neck as he attempted to stand up. When he felt his Sharingan turn off, his eyes widened in alarm, and he became helpless to activate it again. "No. This is not possible. The elemental nations are supposed to submit to me as their leader. I won't admit defeat to a samurai." Obito's face quickly contorted into a sneer as he hatched a sinister scheme. Naruto smiled as he turned off his Kyuubi cloak and made his way slowly to Shizuka by hopping along the tree branches. Then he felt Obito's energy signature rise and something burrow beneath the ground, and the grin vanished. The direction that burrow was taking shocked him. No. He quickly activated his Kyuubi cloak again and appeared next to Shizuka, pushing her aside. A few seconds later, Shizuka felt a wet sensation on her face and heard a squelch. She looked at her hands after wiping it off and dreaded the worst. When she looked up, there was Naruto, impaled on a wooden spike, just as she'd imagined. He looked at Shizuka, who had tears in her eyes, smiling with a bloody grin on his face. To finally meet you, Shizuka, was a privilege. Softly, Naruto said, before coughing up a large amount of blood. I appreciate the wonderful times we shared. Here is where Naruto stared up at the sky, his vision blurring. Mystera, to put it simply, I'm going home. Naruto opened his eyes wide and took stock of his situation. The sky was blue and partly cloudy, and a refreshing breeze blew occasionally across the landscape of green rolling hills and distant mountain ranges. There was a slight mist covering the ground, but otherwise it was bright and peaceful. So this is heaven, Naruto said, before instantly frowning at the thought of Shizuka. Naruto wished he could be with her more often. Enough to buy a home in the Iron Country Mountains and raise a family. In addition, Naruto hoped to one day train an apprentice of his own. Sighing, Naruto set out to investigate, only to discover that he no longer felt Kurama's presence within his own body. He quickly removed the armor and exposed himself, staring around wildly. He made an effort to draw on what little chakra he possessed, but nothing materialized. Both the seal and his war wounds had disappeared. Naruto re-ensconced himself in his armor and walked slowly through the landscape he would spend the rest of eternity in. In this dimension, time did not exist, so Naruto had no idea how far he had gone. The scent of a nearby forest, however, was something he did notice. His nose was assaulted by the smell of pine needles, decaying leaves, and dirt. Naruto cracked a grin here because he felt he was back in Konoha. For the second time in his life, Naruto had no idea how long he had been here or how far he had traveled to get here. His life's experiences kept flooding back to him as he wandered through the forests of heaven, reinforcing his gloomy disposition. A campfire's smoke and the chatter of its attendees soon filled the air. Naruto put his hand on Hanjo and walked silently toward the commotion, still bewildered. Tears welled up in his eyes, and his mouth dropped open as he entered the clearing. The two Harumasa brothers were spotted relaxing on a log in front of a cozy fire. In the company of Fukui and Takeshi. At Shizuka's. Obito flipped over so that he could sleep comfortably on his back. The whole time, he couldn't contain his glee at what he'd done. Seeing Shizuka stagger over to Naruto and slowly remove him from the wooden spike he was impaled on brought him great joy. Eventually, he was able to speak after his laughter subsided. Zetsu, if you would, I have other plans at the moment, but we will meet again. Shizuka missed the Akatsuki chief's entire speech and missed Zetsu and Obito's departure. All of her feelings were shattered. The man she had loved more than anything in the world was dead and would never return. Shizuka's eyes widened as she cried into Naruto's bloody chest, and she seemed to hear something. After dabbing her eyes, she picked herself up and got to work applying what she'd learned from Tsunade. She was able to tell that Kurama was frantically trying to hold together more than just the seal as a diagnostic jutsu ran its course. Something of much greater significance. Shizuka didn't waste any time getting to work on the huge gash below her heart. Once the door was shut, she realized it wouldn't be enough. Hang in there, Kurama, Shizuka said as she removed a scroll from her vest and opened its contents. With a flurry of quick movements, she dipped her brush in the ink and began to make strokes on the parchment before her. She finished the stasis seal in a matter of seconds and placed it on Naruto's forehead, instantly placing him in a coma. After retaking the diagnostic scan, Shizuka let out a sigh of relief. Naruto was clinging to life at best. She began working on another seal, this time on a fresh sheet of parchment. It took a moment, but she finally got Naruto inside and sealed it up for the trip. She smiled as she zipped up her pouch containing her Fuinjutsu supplies and ran full speed in Aim's direction. And Jiraiya. The fight between the tailless-tailed beast and the great toad sage has been extremely intense. When Kisame used a water jutsu, Jiraiya would counter with a fire jutsu. Samahata's near-total transformation to stone made it impossible to drain the sage's chakra, and Jiraiya's famous hair jutsu deflected any attacks that did land. Kisami's day was not looking good, but he did have a significant advantage over the Toad Sage. Chakra. Kisame was given that name for good reason. He possessed an abundance of chakra. However, Jiraiya's time in Sage mode was limited. That, and his supply of chakra was diminished. Jiraiya saw Shizuka rushing towards AIM with a huge scroll in tow and red puffy eyes as the two were engaged in taijutsu so fierce that their blows shook the mountains. The two together didn't work for him. Thinking, Naruto, did something happen to you? The Toad Sage dove to avoid a kick before countering with a punch to Kisami's gut. My godson and his future wife need me, and I can't keep fighting. Kisame rubbed his stomach and smiled as he prepared to merge with Samahata and release a massive waterfall to engulf the sage. He planned to systematically rip the Sennin to shreds there. That was before he overheard Jiraiya say 4 words as she completed the summon's hand signals and everything fell apart. Call for the destroyer of food carts. Without remorse, a giant green toad with 2 katanas strapped to its back fell from the sky and landed on Kisame. The shark-like man was fusing with his sword, leaving no room for maneuver. When the toad heard the crunch of bones and the scream of extreme pain, it opened its eyes and looked down. The summon looked around, shrugged casually, gave Jiraiya a thumbs up, and vanished. The Toad Sage, as he is known, glanced pityingly at Kisami's lifeless body before following Shizuka's lead and sprinting towards AIM. If Jiraiya had stayed, he would have seen Zetsu pick up the unconscious swordsman and disappear. Gaara and Iwa. The time for Shukaku to undergo his transformation was quickly running out. The damage caused by the combination of those 4 elements was substantial. The Biju planned on getting some rest so it could recoup its energy. As Kakuzu and Hidan's coordinated attacks became more effective, fatigue became apparent. The screams of one of Kakuzu's beasts echoed through the room just as Shukaku was about to play his final trump card. When 2 members of the Akatsuki noticed a new group approaching them, they knew they were in for a fight. As a result of Orochimaru's oversight prior to this war, Obito was able to clear up any confusion about his actions in Iron Country. Kakuzu knew it was time to flee when there were only 3 hearts left and rebels trained by Tobi himself were advancing on the Iron Country. The ancient Nin said, Hidan. Time to go, as he ordered the rest of his hearts to return to his body. The Jushinist could only give the middle finger in response. Kakuzu was about to snare his manic partner with his tendrils when he saw Shukaku raise his head to the sky and begin collecting red and blue chakra bubbles, and his anger subsided. He was aware of the nature of this assault and the destruction it would wreak. He had to do it. Kakuzu fabricated wings using his wind magic and earth grudge fear and jettisoned the place. Hidan, on the other hand, leapt into the air with a mad grin on his face, ready to blind the Biju. One that was wiped out along with him when Shukaku unleashed his Bijudama. The rebels and anyone fighting in the village could feel Shukaku's chakra building up, and they watched with wide eyes. In a word, it was anarchy. People dove for cover and some even tried to injure their allies in an attempt to stay alive. In a hidden bunker, Kuretsuchi felt the shift in chakra and realized that from now on, Iwa would no longer be regarded as a great village. The Bijudama flew straight through the middle of the village, setting everything it touched on fire. Gaara regained enough control as it approached the cage tower to launch the orb of destruction into the air, where it subsequently exploded. The impact was comparable to that of an atomic bomb. Iwa was nearly entirely demolished. The document cache and several other nearby buildings were buried after the cage tower collapsed. Anyone caught in the blast's path was destroyed instantly and painlessly. There were deaths on both sides as a result, but many more lives were spared than lost thanks to Gaara. That Jinchuriki was last seen lying face up and smiling on the ground. Fu approached Gaara, taking her by the right arm. A piece of debris had struck it, causing severe bleeding, but Chome was already attending to the problem. She sighed and sat down next to her fellow Jinchuriki, at which point she began to gently stroke his hair. They were aware that their job was done. "Milady, are you in need of assistance?" the rebel leader asked with a trace of concern in his voice. Fu chuckled and shook her head. "No, but thank you. I do ask that you assist us in returning the injured and the rest of the group to Taki. I will be your guide." The head of the rebels bowed. Literally, at once. As orders were being shouted, Fu got his first look at the wreckage Gaara had caused. Kuretsuchi, on the other side of the village, was doing the same thing. Even after years of healing, the scar would be visible. Iwa's body and soul were both shattered. Aim. Kimimaro was wide awake and unperturbed by the presence of Hinata, Sakura, and Ino. The last surviving member of the Kagaya clan was unconcerned by the numerous diagnostic jutsu performed on him or the taking of his blood. Each of the 3 doctors or nurses took precautions to avoid making Kimimaro's illness worse. Hinata, other than the chakra issues, can you sense anything else with your Byakugan? Ino asked as she took notes on her clipboard. Hinata rechecked the Kagaya and saw that his heart and lungs had weakened. We have exhausted our resources, Ino. It is time for Tsunade to take charge. After raising an eyebrow, Sakura inquired, why? When asked how he was still alive, Hinata sighed, potential heart and lung failure. Transporting him will be tricky. A code blue was called before the patient could be placed in an artificial coma. Suddenly, there was pandemonium throughout the hospital as medical personnel hurried to the lobby carrying a stretcher. Sakura quickly induced a coma for Kimimaro, and the 3 of them hurried to the nearest doctor for help. However, they didn't need an explanation when they saw Shizuka sobbing uncontrollably and Naruto on a stretcher. The chief physician nodded slightly, allowing Hinata and the others to assist the incapacitated commander. Jiraiya came in as the 3 were leaving, looking worried. As in, where is he, where is my godson? The doctor greeted Jiraiya-san with a polite smile and explained, I'm sorry Jiraiya-san, but we cannot allow you to see him while the nurses are working on him. The old man scowled, damn it. I need to see him before the Kyuubi escapes. Everyone around suddenly became very quiet. No one said a word as they made way for the man to walk by. The doctor in the room watched Ino remove Naruto's armor while waiting to see how the Tsunade apprentices would fare under pressure. He was surprised to see that even though someone's life was at stake, nobody panicked. When Sakura shouted, Hinata, the person obeyed immediately and began scanning Naruto's chakra system. Again, the ki in his body necessitated a quick shutoff. While Kyuubi's ki isn't depleted just yet, his chakra is dangerously close to overload. Sakura asked a straightforward question as she performed a diagnostic jutsu. And what is the good news? In other words, Shizuka's stasis seal is keeping that at bay. After a brief pause to put a breathing tube in Naruto and start an IV, Ino muttered, we need a seal master to deal with Kyuubi. She then turned to Sakura. She handed the doctor her clipboard, sighed, and explained Naruto's injuries. Most of Naruto's wounds are relatively minor, but he'll need a new heart to fully recover. The doc cut in with a question meant to put the shinobi with the rosy hair to the test. Why would that be? I asked. The wound is right under your heart, right? Hi, but there was a previous injury before that, agreed Sakura. One which basically shut down all his major organs at once. The doctor, taken aback, looked out the window at the patient's girlfriend, who was being comforted by Jiraiya, and blinked in surprise. He went to the door without hesitation, opened it, and invited the 2 inside. Shizuka stumbled through the question, how is he? As tears welled up in her eyes. With a grin on her face, Hinata said, your seal saved his life, but Kyuubi's chakra is threatening to overload his system. Jiraiya nodded and said to his godson, I figured as such. May I? You may, the chief physician agreed, but I have a question for Shizuka. Shizuka-san here. Sakura has informed me that Naruto had an injury roughly a year ago that rendered his vital organs inoperable. Could you please elaborate? Shizuka took a deep breath in and then sputtered it out. She sobbed as she recounted what had happened to Naruto during the Iron Country War. Through Naruto. The Harumasa brothers were mid-sentence when they looked up and saw someone who immediately made them happier. Adding another log to the fire, Fukui said, come, we have much to discuss, my student. Naruto stutters, M-Master. Is that really you? After seeing his sensei for the first time. The 2 of us are not figments of your imagination, Takeshi confirmed, so please take a seat so we can get started. Shortly after pausing, Naruto made his way over to the log and sat down. Looking into the flames, he saw Shizuka, Kurama, and Mifune, but as soon as Fukui spoke, their faces disappeared. Have you adopted the Harumasa name, thus granting me my final wish? When asked if he agreed, Naruto nodded silently. His focus was unwaveringly on the blaze. Fukui sighed and stood up to go over and put a comforting hand on the troubled young man's right shoulder. Turn your attention away from the memorial flames, my student, and demonstrate the courage and resolve with which you fought." The Harumasa brothers frowned as they received no further response. "Naruto, the son I never had, is this how you honor my death? By doing the one thing I told you not to do?" Takeshi winced, remembering the anguish he had caused his brother. "You leave behind family and friends, but I have to ask you, my student, would they be proud to see you now?" Intrude, Takeshi. "Naruto, you, like I was so long ago, were a broken man. Look what happened to me, the monster I became as I held onto that hate, that depression." Naruto lifted his head and wiped away his tears. He sighed and shook his head helplessly before answering. After catching his breath, he said, "You're right, what honor have I brought to them if I spend my eternity sulking? I should be happy that the ones I left behind are still alive. Like you, Master, I made a decision about the course my life would take. However, while your decision led to redemption, mine led to self-sacrifice." A grin spread across Fukui's face as he patted Naruto on the back and said, "And there's the student I know." Naruto flashed a grin, and Takeshi broke the silence. "Because of what you did, the prophecy will no longer come true. However, your journey is far from over." A bad feeling about where this was going caused Naruto's smile to vanish in an instant. At Naruto's expressions, Fukui nodded his head. "You are still the child who will bring about change, but now you will also experience immeasurable sorrow along the way, a sorrow that will not only put you through a mental crucible but also cause you to question the code you have devoted your entire life to following." Naruto sighed and turned back to the flames, remembering all those he had to leave behind during the war with the Iron Country. "Why can't death take me? I'm proud to have given my life defending what I cared about most, and I wish I could spend all of eternity with you." Takeshi put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and smiled, "Your path, Naruto. Can't you see? Another challenge for you to conquer." Naruto smiled and pushed Fukui's hand away after he ruffled his hair, and Fukui nodded. "The question now is how you will respond to the icy talons of death, but my brother is right, my student." Naruto turned to see a door carved into a nearby tree after a white flash appeared behind him. Naruto turned around to see the Harumasa brothers beckoning him out the door. After his brother finished, Takeshi said, "Go now. We will all be here waiting for you when you get back, my student, so don't forget that." After Naruto had given his master a bear hug, he bowed to him. Then he faced Takeshi and stared directly into his eyes. After a tense minute of knowing what the other was thinking, they bowed and shook hands. The past was forgotten. Naruto took a deep breath and slowly made his way to the door, where he grabbed the handle. He turned around for a second and saw the Harumasa brothers waving at him, their grins unbroken. When Naruto smiled and opened the door, he followed suit. Aim. Shizuka took 15 minutes to explain what had happened to Naruto, and most of the audience was understandably shocked throughout. A sigh from Jiraiya roused everyone from their thoughts. After waiting for a response, the sage asked, "Well, do you want the good news, or the bad news?" The good news is that Shizuka did a great job with the seal, saving Naruto's life. The bad news is that I can't fix Kyuubi's seal. Something is blocking me from doing so, leaving Naruto's fate up to him. I apologize to Shizuka. Thankfully, thanks to this mini-war, we have plenty of compatible hearts. Get our commander ready for surgery, and pray to Kami that the kid survives, the doctor sighed. Cage office, Kiri. Yugura, to put it bluntly, was angry. The Hokage of Konoha reportedly destroyed his entire navy single-handedly. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that the rebels have recently taken control of a portion of the village. Yugura's sacrifices in this war left him without enough men to launch a successful counterattack. In addition, Zabuza was reportedly constantly instructing the insurgents. Initially, Yugura's troops made quick work of the poorly organized and outgunned resistance, but the tables had since turned. When he raised his hand to summon his secretary, Zetsu entered the room. Kabuto. Yugura beamed, realizing he recognized the man. Why, then, does Orochimaru's runner-up visit my lowly abode? Kabuto straightened his glasses and rummaged in his kunai sheath. He smiled evilly and produced a tiny glass vial containing a dark, murky liquid. The Jinchuriki was bewildered and furious at this point. Please explain the miraculous effects of this tiny bottle of medicine. I'm willing to listen, but please be mindful that my current situation does not allow for any trivial experiments. Kabuto replied in his usual cool manner. As in, ye who have little faith. Before continuing, the man let out a brief chuckle. A unique formula designed to eliminate your rat problem. The outcome will make you want more, I promise you that. The Mizukage narrowed his vision in a vain attempt to detect deceit. Yugura twisted around in his chair, grinning maniacally as he gazed out the window of his office in the direction of a specific neighborhood in Kiri. Mei's forces have completely overrun the northeastern area. I want them gone, dead, maybe even erased from the face of the earth. The Mizukage reoriented his gaze to meet Kabuto's. Oh, and make a message that will put fear in the hearts of the rebels. Usurpers have no right to enter my village. As you wish, Kabuto nodded. Come Zetsu, it's time to enact stage 1. Yugura watched them go, a mad gleam in his eye, before turning to the northeastern part of the map. The Jinchuriki disappeared for a second in a whirlpool of water before reappearing on a rooftop overlooking the modest rebel camp. As the rebels went about their business, Kabuto suddenly materialized inside an alley and began to chuckle to himself. He thought there were between 100 and 200 people in this area, and they would all be pleased with his unique recipe. Not long after, Zetsu showed up and duplicated himself. After ingesting the contents of the vial, the clone took on the appearance of a typical rebel and headed towards the sector's epicenter. Kabuto mended his glasses in the shadows next to Yugura. I hope we can find a way to collaborate after this spectacle, so in the meantime, Yugura, enjoy the fireworks. Yugura nodded, but he continued to watch the rebel as he strolled nonchalantly toward the sector's center. Surprisingly, none of the rebels saw him as an enemy spy. But things changed when the clone began to grow and bubble, releasing a toxic green gas. The clone then suddenly exploded, spreading the green gas throughout the area. Those who came into contact with the green fog melted like chocolate left in the sun, and the Mizukage watched with morbid curiosity. In less than a minute, nothing but the skeleton was left. Looking at Kabuto, Yugura arched an eyebrow and said, I wasn't expecting such a reaction. Okay, you have my attention now. When you've completed your mission, please come to my office. We need to talk. Kabuto agreed and waited for the gas to clear before enclosing the skeleton in a scroll. No one made it out alive. Hours later with Mei at the rebel base. Mei, Ao, Zabuza, Chojuro, and Haku huddled together just days after seizing the northeastern sector to plot their next move. A terrified messenger rushed into the tent, interrupting their deliberations. Mei-sama, you need to take a look at this. She glared at me menacingly and said, speak before I melt you. After some hesitation, the courier said, the northeastern sector platoon is gone. Exactly 0 people made it out alive. Mei, Zabuza, and the others all looked absolutely aghast. Without hesitating, they followed the messenger to the camp's edge, where they discovered a pile of skeletons and a note at the bottom, apparently written by Yugura. Zabuza picked up a note and read it. This should serve as fair warning that usurpers are not welcome in my community. The following gift will be sent whenever I feel like it. Have a good one. Yugura. Haku's eyes narrowed as he glared angrily at the wreckage and then at Kiri. From where he was standing, he could almost make out the evil grin on that cage's face. At first he planned to round up a mob and storm the building, but then inspiration struck. The samurai we met on our travels might be able to help us out, Zabuza-sama. Mei's brows furrowed and she asked, samurai? Only the Akuma no Senshi legends come to mind as a possible exception. After avoiding the spotlight for a while, she returned to the tent and emerged reading a book. This is the bingo guidebook. She flipped open the book to the section that had been highlighted. Akuma no Senshi. Name originally given, Naruto Uzumaki. Age, 13. Iron Country Villagers Association. Grade, maybe S. Rank S in Kenjutsu. The mystery of ninjutsu. A level of taijutsu. A cloak of orange-red chakra is said to surround him, and he is rumored to be able to launch attacks that are invisible to the naked eye. War hero from the recent conflict in Iron Country. Do not provoke, and never go into a fight by yourself. Contact the local bounty office if you have any additional details. Presently, there is no incentive. As usual, Ao was impressed but still skeptical. Can we trust this guy, Mei-sama? Perhaps he's a sleeper agent for Yugura. Ao was unable to continue because he had been knocked unconscious by Zabuza's punch to the face. TCH, you savage. Haku and I actually got to meet the kid and his master face to face. I'd say that kid is pretty cool. Given his line of work, it is not surprising that he displayed maturity beyond his years. Mei mused to herself, well, they say the samurai are bound by honor, so why not? I'll give you the boot in 6 months so we can regroup after today's setback. In a friendly tone, Haku said, thank you Mei-sama, we accept. This person then chuckled and said, glad you do, otherwise I would melt you. Through Naruto. A sudden burst of light blinded Naruto the moment he stepped through the door, but once his sight was restored, he gasped at the devastation he saw within his own mental landscape. The once blue skies were now a menacing black, punctuated by occasional lightning and the rumble of thunder. The grass had lost its green color and had instead turned a brownish yellow, looking dry and dead like the surrounding forest around Kurama's cave. A brisk wind blew, making Naruto shiver, but he persevered in his quest to determine whether or not his foxy friend was still in attendance. Kurama? Naruto yelled into the cave where the Biju was hiding, expecting a verbal response, but all he heard was a howl of pain. Naruto ran inside, fearing for his friend's life, and found a sickly-looking Biju. Almost identical to his appearance before his chakra was drained. A raspy "Kit" from Kurama. You have to help me regain control of my chakra. In my efforts to restore your health, I may have overused the sealant. Naruto approached his companion, the fox, and placed a frowning hand on the animal's snout. To paraphrase Kurama, rest now, Kurama, my pal, for I will do what needs to be done to ensure both our lives will endure for many years to come. The Biju nodded, tears streaming from his eyes, and eventually drifted off to sleep. This was the first time Kurama had felt this way since he was created. Afraid. In the midst of this unusual feeling, however, a ray of hope shone through the cloudy sky. Naruto's temperature and the overwhelming joy from channeling Kurama's chakra both rose as he delved deeper into his mental landscape. The only problem was that Naruto had already been here before, when he had vanquished Yami and banished his shadow self. Naruto examined the broken door and the chains on the floor that had once restrained Yami. When Naruto looked further, he saw that Kurama's chakra had dispersed throughout the room like a thick mist. With a sigh of relief and thoughts of his family and friends, Naruto stepped into his next challenge. Please, everyone I've ever met and become friends with a Shizuka, Fukui, Kurama, Mifuneya, give me the strength to do what I'm about to do. As the chakra began to seep into his body, Naruto clenched his teeth in pain. The intensity of the burning sensation was so great that it was as if he were being burned from the inside out. But instead of retreating from the situation, Naruto moved boldly into the spotlight. His blonde and red streaked hair fell out, and his once supple skin began to burn and flake. Even though the pain was so great that it made Naruto want to cry out, he still managed to sit in the lotus position, close his eyes, and meditate. Take a deep breath in, and let it out. Pause, hold steady for the moment. Think positively, plan for the future, and ignore the present. As Naruto's breathing steadied, he realized that the pain was gradually disappearing. Something he had to live with from his past. Naruto was forced to revisit his entire life, from childhood to training. Hey, my significant other. Surely you must realize that everything you've ever known to be true has been a lie. Join me, and together we'll be complete again. Naruto remembered Yami's voice, and it rang true. You're just a vessel waiting to be filled, an empty glass. In a wise voice, Fukui said. I feel your pain, and you feel my pain. Shizuka then took the floor. Are you willing to lighten an elderly man's load? Asked Mifune. To paraphrase Naruto's father, your mother and I are so pleased with the man you have become. Smiling, Minato said it. Naruto beamed as pleasant recollections gradually supplanted unpleasant ones and the blank area was reclaimed. It was there that Naruto first experienced the sensation of weightlessness that comes from tapping into his wind ki. And keep in mind, my pupil, that we shall wait. We'll all be here waiting for you when you get back. When Naruto's master finished that sentence and stepped through the door, the mental landscape exploded in a brilliant red-orange flash. A burst of light that went beyond its confines. Hospital AME. As Naruto was being wheeled into the operating room for his heart transplant, a golden glow filled the room while the head doctor went to gather the necessary surgical equipment. The hospital's walls crumbled, the electronic medical equipment failed, and a profound silence pervaded the facility. The hospital staff, including Hinata, Ino, and Sakura, rushed over to investigate the noise, but instead witnessed a miracle. There was a spectral figure in all white robes standing by Naruto's bedside. She had piercing sapphire eyes and golden hair that reached down to her lower back. The face of the figure was fit for a king. It was flawless. She exuded an ethereal beauty that commanded utmost deference. In the words of your comrades, "Go now, my champion, be free of your injuries, join your loved ones. Show this world what it once lost." Angelic voiced, but only Naruto could hear it, the figure said. Naruto was suddenly surrounded by a blinding white light as the smiling figure tapped his forehead. Everyone rushed to their commander's side as soon as the light subsided and they could see again. Naruto was taken to a recovery room and one person was informed after a scan revealed he had fully recovered from his injuries. Shizuka returned to the room 5 minutes later to find Naruto smiling, his deep blue eyes still holding hers. Shizuka didn't think twice before rushing up to embrace her soulmate, despite the fact that their embrace brought tears to their eyes. "I appreciate it, Kit." Sighing deeply, Kurama finally opened his mouth. "Kami has seen your partner and Yuan knows you need to rest." As he thought it, Naruto smiled. "I appreciate it, Kurama. And it feels great to be home." When Jiraiya, Tsunade, Nagato, and the others finally arrived hours later, they found the two lovers fast asleep in each other's arms. The war had ended, and peace had returned to the elemental nations, at least temporarily.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.